Interim DNC chair Donna Brazile contains bombshell accusations. She says the DNC heavily favored Hillary Clinton because the Clinton campaign helped pay off their debt before she got the nomination. Now, President Trump is calling on the Justice Department to investigate his former rivals. Errol Barnett has the latest.
A lot of people are disappointed in the Justice Department, including me.
President Trump's last words before leaving the White House Friday made his displeasure with the Justice Department clear.
All I can tell you is this. There was no collusion. There was no nothing. It's a disgrace, frankly, that they continue.
And as he does repeatedly via Twitter, Mr. Trump encouraged the Justice Department to investigate Democrats.
You ought to look at Hillary Clinton, and you ought to look at the new book that was just put out by Donna Brazile.
Fueling the president's argument is a revelation by the once interim chair of the Democratic National Committee, Donna Brazile.
As long as she's in charge, we're never going back, and that's why I'm with her.
Brazile became the head of the party amid email hacks coordinated by Russia last year. At that time, according to her upcoming book, she discovered an existing signed agreement where, quote, in exchange for raising money and investing in the DNC, Hillary would control the party's finances, strategy, and all the money raised. She goes on to write, this was not a criminal act, but as I saw it, it compromised the party's integrity.
We have one area of disagreement with the secretary.
The document was signed by the DNC and the Clinton campaign in August of 2015, early in the election cycle when potential candidates like Vice President Joe Biden were still deciding whether to get in. Former Bernie Sanders campaign manager Jeff Weaver.
What these types of activities do is destroy the faith of people that we have a fair and democratic electoral process.
Nomiki Konst is a CBSN political contributor and Democratic strategist. She joins us now, and we should say, Nomiki, right off the top, you are part of this Reform Commission, right? Tell us a little bit about that, the commission that the DNC has set up specifically to address some of these concerns.
So during the convention, both the Clinton campaign and the Sanders campaign got together, it was part of their agreement, that they would put together this Reform Commission. Every election cycle or so, there's a commission to address the previous election. Obviously, this election was very heated, contested, and a lot of the claims that are being brought out now were brought up back then. So it was an agreement to set up a commission, which started earlier this year. There's 21 members, and we're dealing with primary reforms, caucus reforms, superdelegate reform, which is a mandate, and of course, party reform. And I'm on the Party Reform Committee.
So these issues are not new to you, but are you surprised by Donna Brazile's very public kind of airing of these accusations?
Yes, and I think a lot of people feel vindicated, but I don't think it should have rested on Donna Brazile being an insider who comes out and says these things. People, the Sanders campaign has been saying it for a long time. Jeff Weaver, the campaign manager, a lawyer, somebody who's worked on the Hill, who understands this very well, was saying it in January. There was a lawsuit against the DNC. I think there's a little bit of beltway syndrome, is what I like to call it.
What does that mean?
Everybody kind of thinks, well, of course this is okay. We've been doing this all along. First off, they haven't been doing it all along. But because one person of authority says it, and everybody kind of relies on each other for validation and truth and relationships, it starts to become the norm.
So let me ask you, you were very early on a Bernie Sanders supporter. Do you think the bottom line here is that the reason Bernie Sanders did not get the nomination is because of the allegations spelled out by Donna Brazile? That if it had not been for this pact between Hillary Clinton's campaign and the DNC, he could have had a fair shot, you think?
I think that every decision made by the DNC, which was against their bylaws, was predicated on the fact that Hillary Clinton was willing to go out there and raise millions of dollars from Wall Street in exchange for these. One other factor of this is very important. There's a conflict of interest here that no one's discussing. Perkins Coie, the law firm that represented Hillary Clinton in this agreement, also represented the DNC, also represented Hillary Clinton's super PACs, also represents the DGA. There's a major conflict of interest. It's a large law firm. They say they had a firewall, but the reality is they were representing each other, and Bernie Sanders didn't have Perkins Coie as a lawyer. So I think this is a much bigger story than just the primary. It is more about good governance, ethics, whether or not this law firm was really acting properly. And again, they have business all over Washington, so it's just assumed that they know best.
So let me ask you then this. The president has called for some investigation. Do you support that call? You're saying this is about ethics. Donna Brazile, in the excerpt we know in the book that's coming out, has said it was not necessarily illegal what went on, but it is another thing to look at the ethics of it.
I mean, Donald Trump is always going to find something to distract from his own problems. I mean, he has to deal with his own investigation with the Justice Department. I think he should focus on that.
So you don't support necessarily the president's call for an investigation?
No, I think that, we have the Unity Reform Commission right now, and that is the most important task at hand. Tom Perez, Secretary Perez, Chairman Perez of the DNC, Keith Ellison, Bernie Sanders have all come out and said that the Unity Reform Commission will deal with these issues. We present our findings in January, and hopefully by then, we're dealing with things like an open budget. People didn't know
where the money was going.
They didn't even, the executive committee did not see a budget. And it's not about
How's that possible?
Exactly. A corporation couldn't deal with that. A nonprofit couldn't deal with that. So they weren't following their own bylaws. There was no oversight. There was no judicial oversight. How do you hold people accountable? So there was millions, hundreds of millions of dollars floating between all these different funds, and nobody knew where the money was coming from. Nobody knew where it was going. And then they'd say, okay, well, you can look at the FEC filings. It's very wonky, right? But the question is, you have to present that before you spend the money to know if there's conflicts of interest, to know if we have these issues, to know if the vendors, everybody gets those emails, the earth's shattering, the world's on fire. Are they really raising money off of those emails? I mean, those are vendors. So it's just simple good governance, and somehow it got out of control. I think it got out of control because the DNC was broke, and they were put in a position where, I'm going to say it, it was a shakedown. Bernie Sanders paid $250. He did sign, the Sanders campaign did sign this joint fundraising agreement, but he signed it because he needed the voter file. And to get the voter file, they had to sign it, which is $250,000 that came from small dollar donations. Whereas Hillary Clinton did not pay the $250,000, but went off and raised money from Wall Street in exchange.
Let's talk about Senator Warren's comments. She weighed in on this as well, and here's what she had to say on CNN. Let's take a listen.
This is a test for Tom Perez, and either he's going to succeed by bringing Bernie Sanders and Bernie Sanders representatives into this process, and they're going to say it's fair, it works, we all believe it, or he's going to fail, and I very much hope he succeeds.
You're nodding your head, Nomi. What's your reaction to that?
I think Senator Warren is absolutely right. Tom Perez entered this after a contested, heated DNC chairman's race about reforming the party, and now it's been several months, and a lot of these reforms have not been put in place. Nobody's seen a budget. Granted, we're talking about it on the Reform Commission, but he also campaigned on these things. He campaigned on being a full-time chair. He's now working at Brown. He campaigned on raising money. They only have $7 million cash on hand. People will give money to the party if they have faith in the party, which means they need real reforms. This is the party of the people. It is not the party of Wall Street. We have to start being transparent, accountable, inclusive, welcoming new voices. Frankly, I think we need to get rid of conflicts of interest. There are way too many lobbyists and consultants that are voting members of the party, and that's just not ethical. It couldn't happen in Congress. Why should it happen in the DNC?
So let me play devil's advocate here, because at the same time you have folks in the Democratic Party who say it is time to move on. There are these wounds, and they are being addressed right now, and there are people like you on the Reform Commission who are very closely looking at this, but at the same time, unity is what's required, they argue, for 2018 and beyond. What do you say to that?
There's no unity without reform, and I think most members of the DNC, voting members of the DNC, chairs of state parties that have no money, that haven't had money in 10 years, they say we can't recruit candidates if we don't have money. We have to know where the money went. Did it go to a bunch of consultants? And so I think the voices that are saying things like unify, fall in line, are people who, number one, are making money off the current status quo, who have their vested interests in the status quo, or have their identities attached to the status quo. But most people that I talk to, including Clinton supporters, including Tom Perez supporters, including longtime Democrats, realize this is not a Bernie versus Hillary thing. This is about the Democratic Party that lost its way, lost 1,100 seats well before this primary, and has starved state parties. We abandoned that 50-state strategy, which is where we won.
All right, to be continued. Nomiki Konst, great to see you. Thank you so much. Police are ramping up security for